God is good. All the time. I feel like I'm backed up against the wall here. Claustrophobic. I don't know how often you give it thought, the overlap between John the Baptist and Jesus, the similarities of their ministries. But it is easy for us to overlook the influence that John the Baptist has had on Christianity. We think of John the Baptist, we know the, I guess, punchline, if you want to say, or the conclusion of the story. We know he ends up being martyred. But did you know that John the Baptist, his ministry, his school of thought, his following continued for years after he died? Think of Priscilla and Aquila when they're teaching Apollos the way more accurately in the book of Acts. He's acquainted, if your memory will trigger, only with John's baptism. So they teach him the way, right, more accurately. Take a stab in the dark, take a guess. How long do you think that John the Baptist's disciples continued to gather and study his teachings and continue as a following? Take a stab. 30 years? That's about what I thought too. 300. I know. I'm like, how in the world? That's how influential it was. But we don't really give them much thought. It's John the Baptist. Yeah. Mary and Elizabeth were cousins, so they're kind of second cousins. They're related. They had these similar ministries. He kind of just introduced them. But 300 years, there were still disciples gathered in his name. But there's a very important life lesson, I think, with John the Baptist. That being that no matter how powerful your ministry may be, in whatever form it could be, or how influential that you can be, it's no guarantee that you will be shielded from life's problems. I hear the question as a minister. I hear it from people that I worship with. I hear it from people I work concrete with. I hear it all the time. Why is it that bad things happen to good people? That's not always the exact question, but that's how it's phrased. How could God allow this to happen to that person? Why did God let this person make that bad decision? All of these questions that are troubling, and there are no easy answers for them. But no matter how involved you are, how devoted, how righteous, that is no protection from the evil that's in the world. And I wish it were other. I wish that it was like I could just work harder and be stronger in my faith. I could accumulate more biblical data. I could be more regimented in the rituals of the faith. And I could stand back and say, okay, now I know that I'm going to be covered and I won't have any worries. And it's not true. And an object lesson is John the Baptist. So, having said all that, chronology, sequence, chains of events being linear is important for you and I. Whenever we tell a story, whenever we recount something, if we see a piece of information out of the news, we want to know what happened first, in the middle, at the end. That's modern. That's not the way that the ancient world valued the recounting of the story. So Mark is going to jump around a little bit, and you might be like, wow, why didn't he tell us, January, February, March? Why is it 1 year later, 2 months later? Why does he jump around? Because they didn't care. That was not important. So it's not unusual for things written 2,000 years ago to jump around time-wise. Okay, does that make sense? All right, Mark chapter 6. Remember, Jesus had just sent out the 12. We looked at that last week, and they're very successful, and things are going well. King Herod heard of it. He had heard of the 12 coming out, the ministry of Jesus, all of this. For Jesus' name had become well known, or known. Some said John the Baptist had been raised from the dead. And you're like, wait a minute. So far in Mark's gospel, we haven't heard anything about John, right, being killed. That is why these miraculous powers are at work in him, being in Jesus. Others said he's Elijah. And others said he's a prophet, like one of the prophets of old. But when Herod heard of it, he said, John, whom I beheaded, has been raised. And then Mark will go into a little detail. For it was Herod who sent and seized John, bound him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because he had married her. Talk about awkward Thanksgiving time, right? That would be it. Yeah. And Herodias had a grudge against him, and wanted him put to death. But she could not, for Herod feared John, knowing that he was a righteous and holy man, and he kept him safe. And this is very interesting. When he heard him, in other words, John is locked up, and Herod is going there sitting outside the cell. Tell me some more. I really want to hear what you have to say, right? And when he heard him, he was greatly perplexed. It confused him, yet he heard him gladly. So, when you read through the Bible, like if you're reading through John's Gospel, and Jesus says, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I'll rise it again, and the crowd says, oh, this temple's been worked on for 47 years, and all that. That was Herod the Great, this Herod's dad, who had put that temple together. So this is Herod the Great's son. This Herod, the term that they give him is tetrarch, and that means a ruler of the fourth. So when Herod the Great dies, his son Herod here gets a fourth of the kingdom. His territory is around Galilee. But Rome never recognizes this Herod as a king. And in 39 AD, he gets his feelings hurt. His pride gets in the way, and he's like, I want to be called the king. So he goes to Rome, demands that he gets the title king, and of course they remove his title of tetrarch, take away his rule at all, and send him home. So I don't know what the lesson is there, but he never gets what he's looking for. So we learn in Mark's gospel, Herod is hearing about the popularity of Jesus, and he thinks, okay, this John, who was so powerful and so influential, he must have raised from the dead. It's got to be John doing these miracles, teaching these teachings, and acting the way that John did. And so he's impressed. Think about, and I even hate to say it, how much of Christianity just feels like a cliche, or how much of the teachings of Jesus that we kind of just take for granted and don't really pay a whole lot of attention to. And Herod is hearing these things secondhand, thirdhand, from a distance, and he is hugely, hugely impressed. Right? And remember now, Jesus and John have such similar messages. Repent. There's a baptism. The kingdom is here. All of these things trying to turn the people back into faithfulness. And so, of course, it's easy to see how Herod could become confused. But then there's Herod's wife. She must not have liked Philip because now she's with Herod, and she's got a grudge. Right? So Herod marries his sister-in-law, and there's tension. There's turmoil. He likes John the Baptist, appreciates his message, But remember, Herod has been confronted by John. He's been rebuked. What do we know about powerful people and politicians when they are confronted? They don't respond well. And the wife, she's holding a grudge. Herodias had a grudge and wanted John put to death. So Herod's got a tug of war. His attention. I know John's righteous. I know he's a good guy. I know he's a prophet. My wife used to be my sister-in-law. Now she wants him dead. What will I do? How do I handle this inner turmoil? And in fact, when you look at the character of Herod, it seems like there's a little bit of guilt. It seems like there's a little bit of remorse. He's flawed. His failures have been pointed out. And again, look at John. Influence is no insurance against suffering or wrongdoing. Herod enjoys the message, enjoys the messenger, and yet there comes a point in time where he's going to cave, he's going to give in. And so Mark lays out the most memorable, masterful manipulation in history. Herod's got a big group together. It's a festival. It's a party. And so an opportunity came when Herod, on his birthday, gave a banquet for his nobles and military commanders and the leading men of Galilee. This is big. This is huge. The who's who list of Galilee. They're all there. And when Herodias' daughter came in and danced, she pleased Herod. The name is not in the Bible. Josephus tells us this is Salome. And she comes in and she dances for Herod. And she pleased Herod and his guests. And the king said to the girl, "Ask me for whatever you wish, and I will give it to you." And he vowed to her, "Whatever you ask me, I'll give it to you. Up to half of my kingdom." Right? And she went out, she goes to her mother. She goes, "Well, what do I ask for?" "What? Do I ask for the Dead Sea?" Right? And you go, "Well, that's not a great gift." Well, I guess you don't know about Mark Antony and Cleopatra. It was a very important gift at one time. It was a good commodity because that's where people got tar. And they actually helped to stabilize the roads. So yes, the Dead Sea was something at one time. What do you want for it? And that is in his region. But Mom, she had a different idea. She went out, she said, "What do I ask for?" And Mom says, "The head of John the Baptist." She came in and immediately made haste to the king, asked, "I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter." The king was exceedingly sorry because of his oaths in front of his guests. He didn't want to break his word. And immediately the king sent an executioner with orders to bring John's head. He went and beheaded him in prison. Now you probably think that they're in the same building. They're probably not. Herod had more than one palace. John the Baptist is probably on the other side of the Sea of Galilee. So think about the timing there. You're going to call the executioner in. "Hey, I need you to go do something." He's going to travel 30, 40 miles, kill him, bring the head back. This probably takes a week between the time it happens. So he went and beheaded him in the prison and brought his head on the platter and he gave it to the girl, and the girl gave it to her mother. We'll come back to the rest of the story in just a moment. So, have you ever seen the Renaissance art pictures, renditions of this festival, the Salome? I mean, there's a lot of famous paintings of Salome and the event. Herod's in a bind, she's dancing. John the Baptist, this righteous, brilliant guy, his neck is on the line here. Herod follows through with the dastardly deed. Now's probably a good time to clear up many cultural misunderstandings and misinterpretations. Be honest. She dances, Herod's pleased. There's no little kids in the room. Everyone here is thinking he's aroused. If we're honest, we look at the Renaissance art, we think she's like a belly dancer, and we think that he is lured into something scandalous, sensual. Nothing inappropriate happened here. This is not a striptease act. This is not a seducing. This is not erotic. This is not inappropriate. But Craig, he was well pleased. And all his old cronies, they're all well pleased too. It's a child's performance. How do we know that? In light of all of the wonderful Renaissance, and I love oil paintings from the Renaissance. I do. I love Caravaggio. He's one of my favorites. How do we know that this isn't belly dancer Salome getting him all worked up? Well, Herod's daughter came in and she danced. She pleased Herod in the guests. And the king said to the girl, well, it could be a girl of any age, right? No. So for women who are past puberty, we have the word eune, which is where you get gynecologists. In the Greek, that's not the word that we have at all. Let me look here. The daughter came in, verse 22, and the king said to the girl, the word there is charazio, from charazion, which means a girl that's a young maiden under age 12. Just think of like sweet little Harper, dressed up with pink ribbons in her hair, pretending she's a unicorn, and dancing on a rainbow in front of all of you. And if any of you wouldn't be pleased by that or happy, there's the door. That's all it is. She's a sweet little innocent girl who got played. She got manipulated. She came in, she puts on a child's performance. Herod's like, oh man, how sweet that is. All the old guys in the room, little tear in their eye, like, oh, look at this cute little girl. What do you want, little girl? Come over here, sit in my lap, I'll give you whatever you want. Like we haven't all said that to little girls or granddaughters, or thankfully I never had daughters, because who knows, you know, how bad that they would have gotten me for everything, right? You know, and his heart is swelling. What do you want? Half of the kingdom, little girl? I don't know. I'll go ask Mom. Mom says, go get John the Baptist. She gets played. Herodias is really the villain in the story here. She's a little girl. She's a little lady. Probably his stepdaughter, maybe his niece. Because Philip could have been the dad, we don't really know. Either way, he's a proud papa, free-spirited kid, and bad things happen. So, Mom, what do I do? Ask for John the Baptist's head. Immediately the king does it. He has to. He's in a bind. He's already made a vow. Whatever you ask for, I'll do it. John the Baptist, the gruesome deed is done. His head is severed, brought in, given to the girl. She gives it to her mom. And then verse 29. When his disciples heard of it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. What do we see here? The consequences of someone like a Herod who allows the worries of the world to choke out his better judgment. He sat at the feet of John the Baptist, first hand, heard his preaching, heard his teaching. He's perplexed by it. He's amazed by him. And yet, in the end, he caved. There's also something else as we close very quickly here. This is a foreshadowing. Mark is giving us a foreshadowing of the death of Jesus. Remember John and Jesus with their very similar message, very similar ministries. We don't know that John the Baptist did or did not perform miracles, but there are a lot of overlays, a lot of overlaps, a lot of similarities, except now, John is beheaded. We know Jesus will also be betrayed with political, powerful people who are regretful, right? Herod's not happy about this. Pilate wasn't happy about it. But there's a huge, huge contrast that kind of jumps off the page. Mark lays it out. When his disciples heard of it, they came and they took his body and they laid it in the tomb. When Jesus is killed, where are the 12? Well, Judas is already gone. Where's the other 11? Do you remember? When he's arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane, they scatter to the wind. It seems like only John is there at the crucifixion. Nicodemus, who's not even really that close, requests the body. But the close disciples of Jesus scatter and hide to save their own skin. So I guess maybe Mark is giving us like a whole new perspective on the risk and the reward of faithfulness. All right, let's stand and sing, shall we?